Alright, so yeah, you've seen it before, so there's, most of this is not going to be new. There's there's 100,000 videos just like it. I'm going to try to show you some new things, and do something that I haven't seen, which is go a little bit more detailed in exactly how the filter works. We're just going to geek out on the function of this. I'm going to try to keep it to about 20 minutes and, excuse some of the harsher noise while we unwrap this box. First, I guess we'll just geek out on the box a little bit. So I have the 207, and I was going to return it. Just for a little backstory, I was going to return it because the 207 comes in at 10 watts, right? And you get 206 at 10 watts, and then you more than double it, and then you get less than double that, right? And that's fine. And then you basically double some of the other filtration components of it, but you don't exactly double the overall volume, if you notice here. So the 207 is a great, for that wattage and the price, not quite half the price, but it's very affordable. It's super quiet. It's got decent enough power. You got to keep it a little higher. You can't walk away with the filter too far because it doesn't have the height. But I mean, the 207 is really good filter. So I actually highly recommend the 207. You can have two 207s, and you're using less power, and look at and you get 600 more cubic volume on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at, what is that? Yeah, vertical pre-filter. Okay. Overall, what are we looking for? The overall dimensions. We don't really get the volume. Canister volume. Here we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's roughly half. But anyway, the 207 is a great buy. I was going to return the 407. Kind of geeking out on it, but I have a plan for it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a T on the intake, and I'm going to separate the intake for two different sections of the thing, and then I can just run one of these, and that for me would be amazing, just to have one filter going. Okay, so that's kind of like the backstory. Really, you're only going to get the 207 or the 407. This one's, why would you do this when you get the exact same wattage? And then it's really unnecessary to go for the 307 for the little bit of extra money. You're right here, or you save the wattage and you go down to the 207 because there's, I don't know, they gave you options, but it's the 207 or the 407. That's your choice. And there are some constructural differences in the hood. These are basically the two exact same, except the canister itself. And then these are actually different in the way that they configure them in the motor design. And even the upper housing, I think, is a little bit different. And I'll show you some of that in a little bit. You get the 4 bags, you get the 4 crates, you get the taller thing. Yeah, I think the 307 has the same setup. I never got the 307, so I can't really do a good comparison, but and then of course you got all the additions. Here's your digester. They put those on the bottom. I'd probably put them on the top. And yep, this quick connect is actually kind of amazing. You don't lose a drop. Super convenient. You just simply can't force it. It seems pretty delicate, but if you find yourself forcing it, then you're definitely doing something wrong. Do not force it. Figure out what's going on and don't force it. Okay, let's open her up. Now, the way that I look at these canister filters, I don't consider them filters so much as I consider them just surface area and then volume, moving volume of water. I don't really rely on them for polishing. I don't think that's exactly what you would do with this filter. If you're looking for a polisher, I would go to Marineland. You know, they have the micron polishing filters. So that's kind of what I would do. And then you've seen this all before. You know, you simply push down, it pops it up. That's how you release, that's how you get it. It doesn't have the gasket now, that's why it was easy. If the gasket was there, you'd actually have to use these to force this lid open. The first thing you're going to do is definitely do a little Vaseline on your seal. Definitely do a little Vaseline, and I mean very little, just coat it very little. Just a residue. Put a little Vaseline on around this edge, the inside edge. If you'd like, put a little bit inside where the ceramic is. I actually took mine off, my impeller off, and I did Vaseline on the ceramic straw. You could pull the ceramic straw out and do a little Vaseline down at the other end down there. And then I put Vaseline on my ceramic magnet. It just in case sand gets in there or debris gets in there, it's got a fighting chance to sort of lubricate its way through without grinding and jacking up the plastic. One thing I like right off the bat is that this is upside down, so that means that, you know, gravity is already going to assist you. Don't let this slam. Gravity is already going to assist you in keeping sand from, you know, that it's upside down, from migrating. At least you have a fighting chance with gravity kind of helping keep the sand out. So that was smart to have the impeller upside down. A lot of times impellers are like this, and if you think about it, you know, it just sort of invites sand right in. And another reason why you want to put Vaseline on is because it'll just make this smoother. You know, you're kind of, you know, you're really putting a decent amount of pressure on this component. And I think with a little Vaseline, you'd get a nice seal. You want that to be nice and tight. Okay, then right off the bat, one of the things that, you know, I found concerning was just the immediate bypassing of some of the water going down the side of the gray crate, because this is not, you know, a perfect seal. Basically, once you're on this side, you're already kind of on the other side of at least this part of the filter, and that's okay because this is actually not really a filter. It's just the biologic component. So there is a little bypassing. This, you need to sort of also kind of keep this direction, so that as you come down, you're not, you know, crushing it too bad, and sort of making it easier for water to sort of bypass the white sponge and kind of head more this direction. Okay, we're going to follow the path of the water. I'm sort of blowing through this because I'm trying to keep it under 20 minutes. And so you're going to go down. The water's going to, you know, has a few options. It's going to take this option. It's going to take this option, and it's also going to take this option down here, and potentially, yeah, and it's going to take this option here. And so it's got multiple ways of going down. It's not really constricted. It has, you know, it has opportunity. This whole thing is it's not so much that the water is going to penetrate these sponge, penetrate through the length of this sponge. It's just that the water at some point has the opportunity to contact and take all kinds of variable paths in and around these sponges, whether it's coming down here and then finding its way out the bottom, because it doesn't directly open, so it's eventually got to find its way out. But the idea is that you're creating different currents at different speeds with different restrictions into this sponge, and you're going to get a variable of exposure, which will give you a variable of different kinds of bacteria at different exposure rates to either the oxygen or whatever nutrients the tank is generating. You're going to have a variety of life living in these sponges. And I think for that aspect, I think they did do a good job at creating that variable of different exposure rates for different times, different concentrations, maybe even some anaerobic situations could take place in here because of the way that, this entire side, there's no, water's not necessarily, this is a little bit different where water could theoretically be coming down and out, but being so tight and depending on how things grow, you could have areas that are being denied fresh water and can potentially hit an anaerobic state. So it's totally possible that you can have an anaerobic state inside of this media. Now, I would probably never clean this unless it was absolutely atrocious. And I would only then clean it because it's absolutely atrocious, not because it actually needs to be cleaned. This needs to be alive. You want this to be colonized completely. Sponges get a bad rap as far as their surface area, but the surface area of the sponge is not what you're calculating. It's actually the surface area of the bacteria itself. And so just volume of bacteria, not necessarily volume of that you can like surface area that you can measure of sponge. You just really need, this is a matrix that holds the surface area of the bacteria. We're going to talk more about that later, so we're going to move on. Let's not fight. Anyway, so I'm actually, at first I wasn't sure about this, but the more I thought about it, I went, it's actually a really great design as far as something that's this contained, that's this simple for what it does. I think they did a really good job with that, actually. Okay. And like I said, I wanted to follow the water. So what's really interesting is that the very bottom of there is where the water finally has an opportunity to go under the baskets and then come back up. And if you look, it's fairly restricted, path that the water is going to be taking, but it's sufficient. Like it's a 1/4 inch off the basket's a 1/4 inch off the bottom, and there is more than a 1/2 inch of space, because if you think about it, you have a 1/2 inch pipe feeding it, so there's way more than a 1/2 inch of volume of water that can fit its way through this side of the into the filter, into the next section. And it also kind of keeps up with the idea that there will be sections of this basket that are not getting the same rate of water flow, which can then sort of help to create some of those more restricted environments for a different kind of digestion inside the sponges, right? So that's kind of what I'm trying to show you guys here, is how the water may, the way that they flow, configured the flow, can contribute to different types of bacterial growth. We're going to go back to the lid in a second, because we'll deal with that in a second. We're just going to do the baskets. You've all seen it before, maybe 100 times, but the baskets are pretty simple. You have this is their version of a polisher. I don't actually think, my problem is that this is not enough surface area. This is the grand contribution to Fluval's polishing, is this much surface area, right? I measured it. It is 9 square inches, I believe. What was it? 45? 45? Yeah, 45 square inches, roughly. Let's just say. It's, let's just say 5 by 5. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It's 30. It's 30. It's just shy of 30 square inches of polishing. So it's really not a filter. Like that's not good. You can't have 30 square inches of filter space. So many other filters offer you so much more surface area than this. It is offering it with 23 watts of force of vacuum on this surface. So you know what I mean. But that's not how that works. I like these, but I don't like them in one. I don't like them in one because the water has to choose one of these columns to go up. There is no bypass between crates. They sit tightly on top of each other. There is no exchange from one crate to the next crate. So there's actually two channels. And if I were doing it, I would say, excuse the package, I would say just stack them like this. And they don't have to be one on top of the other like that. But that's how I would use those. And I would actually use them deeper. So save your carbon for when you need it. Put it, all that put in a Ziploc bag, keep it fresh. That's emergency use, if you need it for whatever reason. I was already in here. Yeah, so I would just do your media however you like. Filter floss, lightly packed filter floss is great. Almost the same difference. You got your second. You got your second one. I would leave these out. These go on top. I would just do another one. You could put some loose filter floss here. You could pull this one up and put a little loose filter floss there. And then what I would do is I would make this your filter floss. And I would just filter floss this, and then go ahead and put these back on top of your filter floss. And then, and just use these for what they're worth. You could fill them up with bacteria, and you don't ever clean them, right? Unless they're just unless you're keeping some crazy goldfish situation, some of the bigger fish situation. And then here is the last thing you actually got to be a little careful of is this, because you don't want to just kind of geeking out on this a little bit right here. I should have looked more closely at, because mine is a little bit different. I didn't have this separate section. Yeah. Okay, so there is a little, yeah, it's pretty tight. This lid almost closes itself off from this second basket, because you got the majority of it right here. And there's I would say there's at least 10%, the potential of 10% bypass through this whole system, between here and around the sides, and just the fluting that they put on there. It's kind of built into it, probably to keep the motor from burning out if you neglect it. But what I would do is I wouldn't have any of these right up. I wouldn't have any of these right up against this like this, because you're gonna basically pack that. What I would do is I'd get some really coarse sponge and rethink and just put some really coarse sponge and just let this flow, so that you don't really just build, because what you'll have is and I've seen it, is where you put this here and it's full, it stops, it's trickling. And why is it trickling? Because you have a little circle of algae that just went, and that was it. And it's like, oh, you could take this out, and then now you got full flow again. It's like it stopped because this constriction spot. So you have to keep this area maximum flow. So you don't really want to. You gotta be careful how you pack your last layer here. Okay. Yeah. So most of that's not new to anybody. I hope I was able to show the flow a little bit more detail. They're all the same roughly. This one has different fluting. The other ones, it's not as constricted at the very bottom there like this one is. The flow is a little bit more direct, a little bit easier to just see actually happen. But it's fine. I dived into it. There's some element of bypass all around here. this is pretty tight against there, but what happens is it comes over the top of the lid, and it does tighten up. I know this looks way bigger than it is. The last basket does tighten up, but it's not a perfect seal. So there is maybe what you see here, I would say maybe 20% of this volume is bypassing further down. But maybe a grand total of 10% bypass. And then, oh yeah, I had something to say about the lid. Yeah, I didn't really care for the way that kind of crushes down on there, but that's okay. The direction that inlet is facing, I thought was a little weird, but it shouldn't really hamper the flow considering the impeller's right there. Oh, that was it. Was one of the other critique was the tolerance of this lid sitting on top of this rubber. The math didn't really check out for me. That's pretty ballsy to go, oh, it's just gonna sit perfectly, right? Because there's no crush, right? So that must be the Italian, just going like, we're gonna make that down to the, you want that to be like, there's no crush. It just sits right there. And so that to me was a little weird. Yeah, obviously don't forget to put your gasket on. Oh yeah, let's go to this. So this is bigger. This is bigger than the 207. I don't know about the 307. The hose is bigger. You're working with a 1/2 inch, I think, or so on the 207, and now you're up to the full 5/8. Problem is this, the inlet, the accessories go back down to the accessories are still 1/2 inch, so you're still feeding it with a 1/2 inch inlet, and you're still feeding it with so I think 16 is 5/8 if I remember. So it's you got this is the bigger hose in the 207. These are bigger fittings, but everything else still fits, right? So like this is bigger, but this is still the same. Same thing with the connector. I'm almost positive this is bigger. I shouldn't say that. I actually don't know. I feel like this is bigger, but this is the same, right? But it is still the 5/8, so it's, and this will still tighten on there, so you don't have to use that hose. You can adapt it. I actually really like their hose. I think it's nice and flexible. It doesn't, you can bend it a little bit better. It doesn't kink quite the same way. This stuff eventually kind of gets, rigid, and so it doesn't have quite that conformity. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love this stuff too, but this I feel like is nice. I like the factory welded connectors. I don't trust you're asked to cut these and then adapt them with the pieces, which I sort of misplaced. So what I would say to you is always make sure that you put your factory end here on this for sure, and never do your own, after you cut the hose, never do your own, because you're just pressure fitting the hose into there. And if you're using clamps, I don't think it really matters or not. Just make sure you put your factory clamps outside the tank, and then use your DIY connector, put that inside the tank, because this way if they come off, at least hopefully your hose is still inside the tank on the outlet side. These still fit. These still fit the 5/8, and then this will fit your 1/2 inch, right? And so that on the 207, this is half the size, but this is the exact same size, right? Same thing here. This is bigger, but this is the same. Same thing on the 207. This is exactly the same as the 207. These are bigger. The 207s are smaller, so that's kind of nice. Like you could, if you're not going to use these, maybe you can put the smaller hose, and you got the bigger one. These and make it easier to clamp. You know, of course they come with their suction cups, and they give you one suction cup to put your intake on. These are kind of useless. It's got a little one-way valve, is nice, but no pre-filter. So, and look at the size of this thing. You're looking at 1.75 inches on this bad boy. I would say probably 1.75 inches. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's right. This is the 207, and then this is the 407. Let's see. Oh yeah. Let's do this real quick. So when you're putting this section on, it's actually really simple. You don't use this. You just keep pushing, and if you're pushing it improperly, it should just close itself. What am I doing here? Wow. Okay. Well, this is going to get edited out. Well, this is a good lesson in not forcing it. On my 207, I don't use this to lock it in because I didn't like the way it feels like that. I'm not going to force that. It's going to break for sure. All I had to do was push, and it would just mount itself. So this is the first time I'm actually putting this on. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So it's just something was a little hung up, but my 207 is not nearly this stubborn. But I know one thing: don't push it. Don't push it. If you feel that, look at it. It's springing. Please don't break it. It does come with a 5-year warranty. And that's the other thing about this thing. It's super quiet. I think it's super convenient. This is a little stubborn, but I'm just not seeing something, I think. Okay. I think it's just the new rubber, finding a good seat. But look, so you don't actually even use this. You get past the rubber seat. A little wiggle, and it seems to do the trick. That's what it is. As those O-rings are finding their seal, it gets so tight that it needs to be perfectly aligned to drop in, and you actually don't even touch this. You just do a little shimmy wiggle, and let it drop on its own, and then you just finish the last little click, right? And then you can open the water. Sometimes there's a resistance in the ball. You could when this starts to finally close, there's a little catch. When you feel that little catch, if you don't need to turn it off, I wouldn't go, oh, there's that catch point, and then just drive it in. What I would do is I'd back it off and just ease into that seal. Don't hit some resistance and just go, oh, I'm going to force it. You'll rip whatever's in there sealing it. You might rip it, and then that could be the end of that for you, and just a little patience and a little finagling, you can be more smooth with your toy. Then of course you got the primer. It does the trick. Yeah, so I hope, yep, that was longer than I wanted it to be, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a deeper dive into the flow. And then the other thing I wanted to show you before we go, since you made it to the end, is I want to bring this boy out from retirement and do a whole little video on this. You know, they don't make these anymore. America's number one canister filter. And that is so true, you know. It was made in the U.S. This was a big deal. It was by Marineland. It's the Magnum 350. They call it a 350 because it was 350 gallons a minute. It's 35 watts, right? I didn't actually buy this setup when I was a kid. This comes with the whole 9 yards. I just got the canister when I was a kid. Oh, we're gonna have fun talking about it. This is a blast from the past. No bypass. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for hanging out with my quick walkthrough of the 407. All right. Ciao.